Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Okay, welcome to the Innovation Hub, Broward College. This is our 5th edition of the Startup Grind, and we're pleased to have Jilea Hemmings with us. She is the author of The Untold Truth About Building a Startup. It's a book that she actually gave me and I read. It talks about the 17 lessons every entrepreneur should know. She is the founder of Greenie Tots. That was a meatless frozen entree for kids and toddlers that went national. She is also the founder of Eshe Consulting, or Eshe? Eshe, sorry. I think it's an acronym with your names, right? Something like that. So we'll learn about her experience as an entrepreneur. I want you to welcome Jilea Hemmings. Thank you. So, we talked briefly before we had a conversation, and I learned that you're not originally from Florida, right? So, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Sure. And first, thank you for having me at Startup Grind tonight, and thank you all for coming. Yes, so I am from the Northeast. I'm from New York. I was born in New York City, and I was raised in New Jersey. So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is just for the feed in there, so make sure you hold it close. Yeah.
So I was raised in New Jersey, and that's where I lived and was.
Okay. So were your parents entrepreneurial? When you grew up, did you have a lemonade stand out there? Did you do things that would have made people think, okay, she's going to become an entrepreneur?
I definitely did. I mean, I came from parents who are entrepreneurs. My father had a law firm and currently has a law firm for 20 years that he's run. My grandfather had the first soft drink bottling company in Jamaica. So I guess you could definitely say it was in my DNA. And anytime that I wanted anything, they definitely ensured that I was going to work for it. So they would meet me halfway. So I had to get creative really fast, and I was always looking for ways to make money to get the things that I wanted, because it was never, here you go. It was like, you have to work for it. You have to at least show that you're going to put an effort in. So definitely, I had lemonade stands. I had a newspaper routes. I sold Girl Scout cookies. I sold Avon. Anything you could give me, I was looking to find a way to sell it, to definitely make money to get the things that I wanted, because my parents would always say, I'll give you 50%, but you got to create the other 50%. So.
Great, that's great training. So it was your grandfather who had the bottling?
Right.
Is it still going on?
No, he sold it to come to the U.S. So, but he had, even before like Coca-Cola came to Jamaica, he was the first. He first was a welder, and he had a welding company, and from there closed that after the success and had the first bottling company.
Was it ginger beer by any chance?
I know, right? No? Or cola champagne.
I've tried it here. We have a lot of Jamaicans here in the staff. So when did you always have a dream of building your own company, or did you grow into this idea? After you became older and starting to go to school and all that.
Well, from when I was young, I knew that I liked business, and I always wanted to go into business. And I also realized I didn't want to work for someone for the rest of my life. That was a key factor that I learned. I think probably because my parents were bossing me around. I was like, I'm going to be my own boss. But for sure, I definitely always wanted to start a business. I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be something that was going to make money, but also have a social impact that was going to make a positive impact in the world as well.
Okay. So you eventually, you ended up in Florida. And as I understand it, it's because you came to school here, right?
Correct.
You went to Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University?
Correct.
Which is in?
It's in Tallahassee. So they have a 5-year program there. So I got my bachelor's and MBA in business management. Mm-hmm. And it was a really great program. It was led by Dean Mobley, and she sat on several boards. And it was a program that actually fostered entrepreneurship for sure. Everyone that came into the institution had to run a company. So you started off as an employee, and by the end, you were actually running an entity if that's what you chose to do. And we'd have board meetings, and we made a lot of decisions. And all the businesses within the School of Business and Industry actually had a purpose. So we had facilities management, we had creative consulting, which did all the creative work. We had forum, because we had a lot of CEOs come to the university. So there was they all actually had real functions, and it was a great experience because it really showed you all the different aspects of leadership prior to going out into the corporate world.
I didn't know that. I was actually, there's many schools that do that. Many of them, you don't know about, I guess. So that's good. That's actually good training, and it's a good way to focus people before they go out, right?
Absolutely.
So you graduated, and then you went on to the corporate world, right? So tell us a little bit about it. I think it was Pfizer first. that
Sure.
you started
So
with?
before Pfizer, I worked with Bank of America and Seagram in marketing and business development. But upon graduation, I worked at Pfizer. I actually interned with them first in New York City. Loved the Pfizer organization. Had a really great experience there working in managed care, and the opportunity was in South Florida. So even though I thought I was leaving, I actually ended up staying in Florida for the opportunity. So it was a great experience working for that industry, but it started to change.
Okay. So how many years were you between Pfizer? I know you were at Seagram's, Bank of America.
13.
13 years. Okay. So I'm sure you had a secure corporate job, right? With good benefits, good pay. Yeah.
Sort of.
Okay. No, you want to elaborate?
No, in the beginning, it was definitely secure, but the pharmaceutical industry started to change. And when I first started with Pfizer, they historically had never had a layoff. And within 5 years of being there, they started having layoffs every year, sometimes twice a year. So, and it wasn't just Pfizer, it was all the pharmaceutical industry was definitely experiencing a downturn. So it started to make a shift.
Right. This is about around 2007 or 8.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, I remember those layoffs. I survived a few of them.
Yes.
But not the last one.
I survived a few too, but I started to get really nervous.
Right. So then, Bank of America, Pfizer, which to me is like alcohol, right? And booze. Bank of America, what made you choose a food product as your base idea? You decided, okay, let's go to become an entrepreneur. Why a food product? If you didn't work for Procter & Gamble or,
Exactly. Right? It was actually came out of a personal need. So at the time, we were going through those layoffs that I was explaining, and my family was expanding, and my youngest son was diagnosed with autism. So the first thing that they tell you when your child is diagnosed with autism that you can make an impact with is their diet. And my husband and I were both working full time. We both had really crazy schedules, and especially with him, we started doing a lot of therapy. We were like, how do you make these lovely home cooked meals every night? And that was actually impossible. A lot of my friends and colleagues also said they had a difficult time. And the one thing we didn't want to do was feed them fast food, but it happened. And every single time that we did, we felt really guilty about it. So I said, you know what, we always, we're good cooks and we like to cook, didn't love, but like to cook. So I said, why don't we try and get into the kitchen and see if we can create some meals that we can store and see how our kids liked it. And they did. So that's actually how the concept came up.
Okay, I see. So what needs did you see out there that were not being met, for this, for this product?
Class, sure.
To start, yeah. So
there wasn't a lot of options at the time. So Kid Cuisine, I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. They are still the market leader. Their food is not healthy, and it's made with poor ingredients and so forth. And the flavor tastes terrible, and I wouldn't feed that to anyone. So that wasn't going to be an option. And then some of the other meals that were available, the taste quality wasn't great. So I didn't want to feed them something that I wouldn't eat myself. So we knew at that point that there was definitely a market to actually create something that was going to taste good, that parents would like to eat and children would like to eat as well.
Okay, so you were able to identify a need and create a product. And you had the business development and the marketing experience from the corporate world.
Right.
Okay, in what ways did that experience help you pursue this as an entrepreneur, and in what ways did it not help you?
It definitely helped when it came to relationship building and targeting and assessing where do we want to place our product, because in the pharmaceutical industry, targeting is extremely key. And relationship building is extremely key as well, because it's not so much about what you have, it's about who you know. And I think that applies to pretty, across the board. Yeah. One of the things that was different that corporate America didn't prepare me for is that a lot of times you can't be you're less efficient in corporate America, I will say, than you are going to be when you are an entrepreneur. You're going to have to definitely, try to cut corners and do whatever it takes to save in every aspect that you can, where, you're only responsible for your one department. So, the budget is there, and you're starting in a surplus, where usually as an entrepreneur, you're like, how can we do this for the least amount of money possible and still get an amazing result? So that was something I didn't learn from corporate America, but, definitely it was great training. I will never say that it didn't help. It absolutely made a big difference in our experience.
Right. No, and I understand exactly what you mean. I spent 15 years in a Fortune 50 company, and work is very inefficient. You know, you're essentially, I don't want to say pushing paper, but you know, you're creating reports and things that are not necessarily. They're produced to make somebody else look good, right?
Right.
And then they're not produced because you need to make a sale and you need to bring in the money so that you can make payroll, right?
And they don't look at it from a top, like how does this affect every single aspect of your business? It's usually a lot of the time, particularly for your department. So it's just a different
great
view.
So you were able to launch this product, right? And then eventually, I don't know how long it took, but you gain national distribution, right? So
Correct.
what was the catalyst, you know, the thing that happened that allowed you to go national with this?
Sure. So I guess I should go back to what was our niche. And our niche wasn't originally our niche. So we first wanted to make healthy meals for kids, and they included meat. And the first shared space that we were going to be aligned to or licensed to was an FDA certified kitchen and not a USDA certified kitchen. So we had to revamp all of our recipes pretty much immediately.
Can you explain? I mean,
sure.
What's the FDA is like pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals.
So FDA is anything that doesn't include meat. So and then if you are going to utilize meat, you have to be USDA certified. So the whole facility was only FDA certified. So at the time, it felt like our world was collapsing because we had this elaborate plan to create this business that now we couldn't do with the recipes that we had. But it turned out to be the game-changing point in our operation that actually gave us a shot to even be in retail and then the ability to even go national. So I just wanted to go backwards with that. But what allowed us to go national is that we started to figure out, and this is where the pharmaceutical industry definitely helped, targeting where are the retailers that we want to be. Where are they? Where do they network? Where are they always? So we found out that it was the Frozen Food Association and the National Frozen Food Association. So we started partnering with them and got key meetings and were able to show what made us different, which was the fact that we were meatless and could serve two markets, vegetarians and those that eat meat, with one product offering. That gave us the edge, and through that, by them being enticed by what we were offering, they actually allowed us to get national distribution, and it grew from there.
Okay, when you say meat with one product offering, what does that mean?
So with shelf space in retail, so they have to have products that cater to everyone that would potentially come into the store. So you're going to have vegetarians, you're going to have those that eat meat. So in the frozen section, they're going to have products to serve both parties. So because our meals were vegetarian, but yet we had a lot of people that were eating meat also ate our meals, it almost reduced the level of shelf space the retailer had to allocate to service that same market. So that was what really gave us our niche, because when they tasted the meals, they tasted like meat. So those who ate meat didn't feel like they were missing out, and vegetarians were happy because they had a solution. So it allowed them to free up shelf space for other entities, and it helped increase their profits.
Okay, no, I understand now, because at one point I thought, well, maybe these people know this is a vegetarian entree, and they buy it as a side.
Okay.
And they buy but that's not it. I mean, it's a full meal, and they think they're getting the protein somehow.
Right. I mean, and we did a lot. At the end of the day, it's a learning curve, right? And we were in a space where, like, meatless, like, a lot of people were not really interested. So we had to do a lot of, like, the Pepsi Coke, taste it first and see if you like it, and they were pleasantly surprised when I said that's actually not meat. They were, like, blown away. So it really started to pick up, and we started to see that even though our meals were for kids, we started having a lot of adults purchasing our meals for themselves, which you never really see in the kid market, in the kid space. So.
Okay, so what are the benefits and the pitfalls of gaining national distribution?
So the benefits are that you can increase your volume, which is important, especially when it comes to production. The pitfalls is you don't want to expand too fast, and that's key, because once the product hits the shelf, especially in retail and dealing with food, it's your job as a manufacturer to make sure the product is moving. So if you expand too fast and you're in too many places at once, you can't touch that customer. So where we were able to nurture the Florida market, because we were always there and always able to drive it and touch it if there was a problem, it became more and more difficult as we started to expand. And what you find is that when you lose that connection in that story, it's how do you drive that? So it was really key, and it's something that can be a gift and a curse all at the same time.
I see. So how many, based on this contract and suddenly having to, turn product in a national distribution, how much did you operate internally and how much did you outsource over your operations or sales or marketing? How did you approach that?
Sure.
And how did you scale it? Because initially you may have done one thing and eventually, what was the formula that you used to take care of all the components that go into this?
Sure. So initially we did everything. So that was and then as we started to grow, we had to scale our recipe. So one of the niches was that our meals always tasted homemade, and we were speaking about that earlier. So we had to go to a food chemist, and they helped us to scale our recipes to try to ensure that we could get as close as possible to the original when it came to our taste quality. So that was one of the big things with outsourcing our products. So once we got the taste quality where we found that it was as close as it was going to be, we then went and got a co-packer. We had to start looking for a co-packer that was able to produce our product, and it's all based on minimums and quantities that you're able to produce. But we at first started doing everything. So that was a really great factor, because then we knew exactly what it was supposed to taste like. We knew the process. We knew everything that needed to be done. And then we were able to explain it to the food chemist as far as the taste quality. And then when we got to manufacturing, we could ensure that the quality met the standard that we were used to. Okay. But one of the challenges with outsourcing is that you're not always there. So, in the beginning, we were able to work on the product runs and make sure that quality standards were where we wanted them to be, right. But things happen, right? We had some issues at times where our boxes would open, so they had to go back into the line and figure out what the problem was, and they had to adjust the machinery. So these are just all the things that you have to think about when you're starting to outsource, that it's not going to be right all the time, and depending on when you find out when it is, can be extremely costly, because if it's at the retailer level, you're buying back all that product. So it's really key that you work closely with your co-packer or whoever you're outsourcing with to make sure that the quality standard is there, and talk about the risk and who's going to actually eat the risk when that happens. And
actually when you go into an arrangement like that, the capital requirements suddenly become very big, right?
Absolutely, because it's not about, for us, a retailer could place an order, but if that order doesn't meet the minimums of the co-packer, then you have a problem. So you need to always understand the co-packer requirements as well as the retailer requirements and the time frame, because it was a priority when it was something that we were doing. Because if you said you needed to order tomorrow, we'll do whatever it takes to get it done, but there's schedules and so forth that have to be adhered to when you start outsourcing your product. You're not the only priority to the company that you're hiring to do the work.
So did you ever cut corners, as an entrepreneur, in other matters, or what lessons did you learn?
Sure, we we cut corners. We cut lots of corners. I don't know how you could do it without cutting corners. We try to do, everything ourselves, which I think is one of the biggest. It's kind of, you have to, but you want to try and not do that, because at the end of the day, when we were marketing, manufacturing, and doing all that, we weren't able to market our product as well as we were able to once we started to outsource it. One of the other things is that we cut corners in a good way. Like, we didn't just go out and get our own kitchen. We rented space and shared space with another kitchen so that we could manage our costs and not grow too fast and have too many overhead expenses before we were ready for that type of budget item. So, there are lots of things that we did. Packaging was one as well. We did a lot of design, and we outsourced a lot of our products overseas as far as the design to help out with costs, because we just couldn't afford to get a lot of the big design houses in the States to do the product. And we were still able to get great work and, be able to deliver. So,
So the lesson is, concentrate on what you do well, right?
Yes.
As much as you can. And then outsource the rest.
Right.
As much,
as fast as you can.
Could pay for it,
right, as soon as you can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So you wrote a book, right?
Yes.
So, and I read it, as I said, I met Jilea a few months ago, and she was kind enough to give me a copy of her book. So what made you decide to write this book, and why did you choose that topic? And what has been your experience as an author now, as a published author?
Sure. I wanted to write the book because a lot of times I would find that when I would ask for advice, or you talk to someone about their business, they're like, oh, it's great, everything's amazing, we're fabulous, we're successful, and nobody would ever tell you the truth, right? And you're like, and I needed someone to tell me the truth, and I did find I had some great mentors that as I started to evolve, that did tell me the truth. But when Jamie and I look back, we were like, if we would have known that, that would have been pivotal and key to ensuring that we didn't have to make that mistake. And it tend to be costly mistakes. So it's really important about who you surround yourself with. And I always said, as we were going through the process, I would write down each and every lesson that I learned, that I was going to put this into a book, because I felt that no matter what business you're starting, they're just key lessons that you just needed to know that could be extremely costly. So for me, that's what made me write the book. It's been interesting. Writing a book is not what you thought. I thought you just write it and you read it once or twice, and there's a lot that goes into it when it comes to editing a book. And just when you think you've caught everything and you've gone to print, you find that there are other things. But publishing has been interesting as well. I mean, it's all about marketing and promotion. But for me, I just wanted to pay forward a tool to help all aspiring and current entrepreneurs just not fall into the same traps that we fell into, because there are a lot of them out there, and they're sometimes easy to avoid if you just know what to look for.
Right. So essentially, I mean, as the company grew too fast, right?
That was one of our biggest issues.
What was your biggest issues?
That and capital.
And capital, right. I mean, if you're growing too fast, you don't have the capital. Payment cycles are very long in the food retail industry, right?
And there's a lot of loss. I mean, that's one of the things that I don't think a lot of, when you start, especially with food, that you don't really realize that the manufacturer is responsible for everything. So even if you're in a store and one of the sales associates leaves a frozen box of your food out, or doesn't put it into the freezer in time, and it starts to thaw, and then it refreezes, and the customer gets it and they don't like it, or it's all on you. But it's not on you in the wholesale space of where you sold it to the retailer. It's on you at the retail cost. So if there's a promotion, it's on the manufacturer. If there's a return, it's on the manufacturer. Everything comes back to the manufacturer. So it's a tough thing, and there's a lot of expense that's involved in that you have to really be prepared for. So it's a definite big capital outlay. And
it's funny. I mean, you mentioned this in this whole entrepreneurship ecosystem. You always hear about success stories, right? And everybody's successful. Everybody that is successful never failed before, right? Which is a big myth, I think. And I think people learn from their failures, and it's happened to me, more than from their successes, right? And I'm a big fan of James Altucher. If you want to read more about, you know who that is? He's failed a number of times, from being very high up to big time crashes, right? And it's great advice, that he gives to his blog. So tell me about some of the awards you earned, Jilea, in your career as an entrepreneur.
Right, okay.
And what they meant then and what they mean now.
Awards, I think, are just good, especially if you have a product, because it builds credibility, right? So I won Entrepreneur Product of the Year. I should say the Green Tots brand won Entrepreneur Product of the Year. So it comes along with a seal. It comes along with a stamp, so that when your consumers see it, it's not just you saying your product is great. It's an outside party saying your product is great. So I always say that if you can find any type of organization that certifies whatever you're going into, or it could be mom approved, any of those things, it really just helps to lift the credibility of your brand. Another one was that I was awarded like one of the top women in business in South Florida, which was great. It's just a great honor. But I think the most important is to find ways to align your product and look for different contests and awards to win that will help lift the brand and build credibility with the brand.
Right. And now you're involved with kids a lot.
Right.
And you have a passion for helping kids become entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So my husband and I started a workshop called I Am a Kid Boss, and we're pretty much giving children third grade and up the opportunity to get mini MBAs, is what we like to call it, in a 5-week process. And the reason behind that is I feel like, why are we waiting? Why are they waiting? Children have amazing ideas. There's so many children who have been so successful, more successful than their parents, and are doing, building the next tech product, or, the next way to save the world. If you watch a lot of the TED Talks, doing amazing things. And I feel like if we can introduce them to business and start to spark that interest, I say, why not? And because I love business development and business creation, it's just great to see children light up and be like, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that's how marketing worked. And them be so excited to continue on past the workshop and continue to develop their ideas. So I just wanted to give them the opportunity to not wait, because there's no reason to, and to foster their dreams as early as now, especially when they have the they don't have to worry about the lights and the mortgage and all of those things. They still have their parents supporting them and feeding them. This is the prime time to start a business.
And also, it's also the time when, their creativity is still, in a virgin
and
state,
they have no fear.
Right? Before you get to a lot of schooling. Schooling takes away your creativity many times, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then, you're involved in education. You were involved in or now, this is the next thing you're doing. Mm-hmm. I think you have an inching for getting back into product development and developing a brand, maybe a product, and going national with it again. Which route do you think you're going to take, or do you have any plans short term, or maybe not?
I always think I will be an entrepreneur till I die. So for me, education will always be key, because I feel like that's just my duty. If I can help a young life see an opportunity, or open their horizons up to possibilities they didn't know was possible, I'll always be there for that. So I'm committed to that. I feel like that's, just the right thing to do. And then as far as product development, I'll always find, I'm always looking for the next innovative product. I'm now just starting to get into tech, which has been interesting and a big learning curve as well. But I'll always be involved in something. I love the idea of business creation, product development, service development. So it's something that I think will always be a part of me. But.
Okay, so if you meet somebody with not a lot of experience and wants to become an entrepreneur, what's the best piece of advice, or the best couple of things that you would tell this person?
The first thing is I would ask them is why. I think it's really important to understand your why. Passion to me is the biggest thing. There's always going to be something that's making a ton of money, and you'll hear about it on the news, and it's the latest and greatest, but it might not be aligned to who you are, your skill set, your passion. So to me, the biggest thing is to start a business that's based on what you're good at and what drives you, because entrepreneurship is the most amazing experience, but it's also going to be the toughest thing you ever go through. So, and when it gets tough, you want that passion that ignites you to be the thing that keeps you going in the wee hours of the morning. So that's really important. The second thing is having a plan. It's key. You don't go on the road before you know where you're going. You GPS it. You don't want to get lost, right? But so why would you not, when it comes to your business, not have that same plan? So I always say, don't spend a dime before you have a plan, because you can eliminate a lot of mistakes just by writing the plan. Because when you start to just step back and brainstorm, you start to see all the things that could potentially go wrong, and you might assess, maybe I shouldn't do this at all. When you start to think about the capital outlay, I know for sure that if we would have did our business plan earlier, we probably would not have gone down the road that we did, because the capital outlay that we spent was tremendous. And if we would have known that and really assessed it, we probably would never have done it, because, it can be debilitating if you don't make those serious plans. And then the last thing is really to make sure that everyone needs capital. So when you're looking to get an investor, I think one of the most important things is to realize your worth. When we started looking for an investor, even though we built this brand and knew everything about it, the ins and outs, we felt like they were the gods, right? Because they had the money. But really all they have is money. You are the expert. So just as much as they come in there with their attitude and they feel like they're giving you the world, you also need to have that same level of confidence that you really know what you're talking about. You really know your brand, and, interview them just as much as they're interviewing you. I always say it's like buying a car. They're shopping around, they're test driving different cars, and you should also do the same thing and come from a place of strength, because this is your passion, this is what you know. And just as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them. So. Okay.
So is there any hot trends that you see now that you might want, that you're thinking about looking into, or that you would recommend somebody that's starting out to look into?
Well, within food, I'll say that, seeking out healthy options is a big trend. I don't know, but right now, 1 in 3 children is going to be diagnosed with diabetes by the time they finish high school. So health is going to become at the forefront of everyone's life, and how, you can see it right now in technology with the Fitbit and trying to get everyone to be more active. And it's definitely going to be the same when it comes to food. So those that are looking for healthier options and making it easy and accessible, because that's one of the biggest problems with healthy food now. It's just hard to get, right? If you want a healthy meal, you have to go home and make it. So staying in the trend of how do you deliver healthy food fast, I think is a really great space to be in right now.
Okay, Great. So we always open it to questions at the end. I don't know if anybody has a question they might want to ask.
I'll kick it off.
Ernest.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about the business plan and whatnot, and like behind you is Google for Entrepreneurs. Did you go to any organizations like that, Facebook or anyone, to try to get some startup assistance, or did you just start making recipes, start making the product, and try to figure out how you're going to get it into a food store?
Kind of the latter initially. I mean, to be honest, and when we thought about it, I didn't even realize the level of resources that were there, because of the fact that we both had MBAs, we were like, we can pretty much do this ourselves. And we did, but, we kind of reinvented the wheel that didn't need to be reinvented. So that was one of when we look back, that we should have definitely honed in on like the Chamber of Commerce, like the small business associations, and went there and looked at them for resources, because a lot of them have built businesses, they're really experienced, and they probably would have given us a lot of insight. So that was one of the mistakes that we made, that we kind of backtracked from and corrected it as we continued to evolve.
Another question I would have for you is, if you had any advice to give anybody, one of the things that's going on right now is there's emergence of what's called minimum viable product versus business plan. So if you go through the business plan process, it can take you 6 months to come up with your plan, start talking to people, find markets. Whereas if you do minimum viable product, you find a quick product that you can get out in a month, you can go out and hit a market, get immediate feedback from them to find out the validity. And like you said, because of your situation, you went from, you were stuck in an FDA kitchen, right? And then minimum viable product would have said, okay, so let's just start making FDA meals. We'll make a couple, see if people like them, and see if they respond, and then we can pivot.
Right, and that's exactly what we did, actually. So it's kind of like a test market. So we did exactly what you said. So we said, let's see if this is viable. And when we went out into the market, we started in farmers markets, and then we evolved from there to see if this is even something that had legs or not. So I definitely recommend that, starting small and making sure you test it out.
And like you said, eventually you found adults were eating your product. Did you find that in the beginning as well? Did you find different flavors or different things that people were coming back to you and saying, we'd like to have this versus that?
Absolutely. We did see it in the beginning, and we actually put it as part of our tagline. So it was like, so good, adults are eating them too. So they became part of our marketing strategy.
So your market changed on you.
Right, and we rebranded several. That's something too, that just because you start one way doesn't mean that's going to be the way it is. Like our first package, we were so excited just to see our brand on a box, and if I look at it now, I'm like, I can't even believe we actually put that out there, right? But when you first start, the perspective is so different. And then as we have, one of my mentors said, do you want people to read what's on your box? I said, absolutely. He's like, well, then don't you think it should be big enough that they can read it? And I was like, oh yeah, good point. So it's like all these things, as you start to get into the process, you start to learn. So we rebranded, and we definitely made sure to find what are those key marketing statements that resonate. So it was a lot about showing the nutritional value and putting all of that, showing that we were organic certified and all of those things, and what was organic in our product and so forth. So we did a lot of tweaking as we evolved, but it came especially from our customers and their feedback.
Great. Another question?
I do have one. When you first started out, before you could become commercialized, how did you know that your product was consumable by people other than your friends?
Farmers markets. So after I went through my initial neighborhood, I said, we got a mobile vending license, and we started going to all the green markets in South Florida and testing it out there. And that's when we got the bug to say, maybe because we're frozen, it's really tough, especially from a temperature perspective in the summer. Let's see how we can get this frozen product into retail. So that's where that was our test market for us. And we were able to bring that into the retail and say, we've already been doing, selling this product. We already have a following. Will you give us a shot? So.
Is it only Whole Foods that you did it with, or did you do it with the green markets on the corners in towns?
We had mom and pops as well, but Whole Foods was our base, and they really nurtured us. Because they have a local vending program, so that was a great place to start. So it's like Harvard putting your product in first, So at that point, you can go and use that as your sales technique into any other retail. If Whole Foods is carrying it and with all their restrictions, then it's good for everyone else. So we started that way.
And I've learned through somebody else that I know who sold to Whole Foods, they're great with small manufacturers and small local producers. They give you a lot of financial.
They give you financial incentives. They don't charge you slotting fees, and then you become so used to that when you go and start speaking with other retailers, you're like, well, where's all these perks? And they're like, no.
Right.
So I mean, they really. I think it's the best way to start. And they even assign you mentors. I mean, it's an amazing program. They really are about reducing the carbon footprint, and they're committed to it. So.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Ernest.
So you grew this business, and when it started becoming very large, did you have to, what kind of corporation did you have to build? Did you have to have a board of directors? How were you moving everything forward and getting the guidance that you needed?
Sure. So we were incorporated from the beginning. We had an LLC, and we would have kept it that way, but one of our potential investors wanted shares, so we switched to an S Corp, and we kept it that way until we closed. I probably would have loved to stay as an LLC, but that's what they wanted at the time, so we were willing to make that adjustment. But that's how we set our company up.
And then you say you closed, or?
Yes, we did close. So one of our biggest issue was that we didn't have, we funded the business ourselves. So we never had a board of directors. It was just my husband and myself, and then we had an advisory board of others that were in the industry and in business that we went to. So because of that, when we just said we cannot continue to put out this level of capital, we had to make a tough decision. So we first went through crowdfunding. We did investor crowdfunding, which is like a circle up, which is a step up above the Kickstarter because you actually can give ownership. We were semi-finalists on Shark Tank. So we tried to get capital in several different ways, and we got close. But it's also about the right partnership, because I actually have seen it go in a really bad direction. Just because you secure financing doesn't mean that you've won, right? Because a lot of times investors utilize that. They'll tell you whatever they need to get you to sign on a dotted line, and then once you're in, they could say, you know what, you violated our partnership agreement. And even if you didn't, they're wealthy. This is why you went to them, right? So by the time you go to contest it, they can keep it in court forever, right? And you're sitting there like, I can't afford this. So even when you're right, you're still wrong. So it's you really want to make sure that you're going. And I was seeing that as well, and I said, you know what, it's not happening. So we had to make the tough decision. But one of the key reasons that we had to close is because we did not secure the financing to continue to hold up this. We were growing at exponential rates, but we just couldn't keep it up.
So you were running at even.
Right. We were running below because, once again, even though you get the sales, you have to promote the product. And margins in food is so tiny that, we were always operating at a loss because you have to keep putting it out in marketing and branding and so forth. So it's how much longer can we hold on? We were trying to hold on. We know that what we were doing was completely, way ahead of the game as far as what we were offering, and we had an amazing product, and we had great retailers. I mean, we had national distribution. All of it was in alignment, but we just personally couldn't keep it up financially ourselves.
Now, that was a really hard decision. How did you decide to say, that's it, we're giving up?
It took a long time. As my husband will tell you, he's like, you're going to make sure every soldier on the ground is dead, or you say no.
That's a good approach.
And we had many arguments because I wanted to I really didn't want to say goodbye to this bait. It became like a child of mine. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. And it's funny, it's when you're in it, it's very tough. But when it's almost that cliche, when one door closes, another one opens. I realized, as I said earlier, I like to cook. I didn't love to cook. So the foundation of what it was, as we talked about earlier, I was afraid of losing my job. I was looking to find something. I wanted to do something that had impact, but I didn't start it because I love cooking, and all I wanted to do was cook all day. And even when I had a horrible day, cooking was what gave me peace. That wasn't it. Business creation does that. So, I learned that through this process. So I would never have been able to do that, write a book that I feel can really help those on this journey really get where they need to be. So it was tough, but it actually turned out to not be as bad as I thought at the time. At the time, I thought my world was ending.
The most important thing is to have capital.
Capital is key.
Right.
Especially in this. I would almost say don't start until you have it.
Or if you can generate revenue.
Right.
If you can generate revenue, And you can make your own.
Unless you're inherently wealthy. I mean, you just want to take your own. I mean, because it's one of the potential investors. He told us when years before we actually were really dealing with him. He's like, "This is $1 million business," and I didn't want to believe him, but he was right. I mean, to really bring a brand to market, it takes a tremendous amount of capital. So it's about $1 million enterprise for sure.
Of investment.
That you're going to need.
Definitely. Yeah.
When you went to the Sharks, I didn't see the episode. I apologize.
Oh, we weren't on the episode. We wanted to be on the episode. We got close. We auditioned, and then we got to the stage of where you meet with the producers, but at that point, the executive producer decided not to go with us, and we actually turned Shark Tank down first. So they first wanted us, and then we had a potential investor that was going to give us more funding. He was actually going to give us that $1 million seed capital that we needed to really grow our brand. So we told them no.
What did they offer you? I'm just curious.
What did Shark Tank offer? Well, you actually tell Shark Tank what you want. So we were like asking them for like 140,000. So when you're dealing with 140, which is not going to get you anywhere,
right.
But it was the marketing and the media behind it. Like we're like, publicity you can't pay for. But then he was offering us $1 million and all the other things that we were going to need and all the other resources. We said it was a tough decision. Everybody was like, "How could you have said no to Shark Tank?" I was like, I don't even know, but we did, and it actually turned out to be not the best decision. But we actually came back, and then we got to the final round, and then they said no.
And when you went to Shark Tank, were you already in distribution in stores?
Yes, we already had national distribution.
But you weren't at the end of your rope at that point. You were still.
No, we were getting close. I mean, we were definitely there. And I went to the potential investor that we were looking. I said, "This is marketing that you can't pay for." He was like, "I understand that." He's like, "But sometimes." And I understand what he was saying. He goes, "If you go out there now and we're not potentially fully ready, someone else who has more capital than you can come and take your idea and get to market and take your shelf space beforehand." He's like, "So even though it's great publicity, it's about timing." So that was one piece of advice that he gave me that was key, but I also know that was the biggest mistake of my life. One of them, by saying no, because you can't trust an investor at all until it's in writing, and even then. So
would your suggestion be keep all paths moving, and until the one that comes through is the one that you would follow?
Keep all paths moving all the time. I mean, even when you sign, because one of the things is, you can sign up with an investor. There's another one of my great friends had an investor, and even it didn't work out. So I mean, as long as you keep those relationships going, they might be the one to buy you out of a bad contract. So I would never say to close the doors on anybody. That was one of the biggest mistakes that we made, because we should have kept it going until he had handed us the check. Right? And because we knew him, I mean, these are key things. Like a lot of times investors are people that are friends of friends that and he played the part. He lived in the right area. He was represented by the right attorneys, so we felt that this was legitimate. He signed the MOU, and so we thought this is key. Like, this was absolutely going to happen, and it didn't. So maybe that experience happened so I can share that with somebody else, so that, when you have that opportunity and you're sitting in front of that investor, still keep your,
If you sure went to Shark Tank, you always
exactly
turn them down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Your options open. We did go to food shows, and that's another thing. So you have to look at who's sponsoring the food shows. A lot of times when the distributor is sponsoring the food shows, it doesn't really benefit you. So I find, and we've all found, that the food shows are a big expense. It does give you publicity, but the thing is that if you're going to start at a food show, you have to make sure you're going to come back, right? Because a lot of times they look at you and you're new. They're like, okay, that's great, but they're not going to take you seriously until you keep coming back. But it's a tremendous financial outlay. So a lot of times, even like UNFI and Alberts, they'll go and they just go. Why do they go? Even when the show doesn't really bring them any business or drive any traffic, is because people just want to see you there, because that just means that you're reliable and that you're credible and that that you're actually sustainable. So I would always say it's better to do the shows that are around the industry that you're in. So for me, the frozen food expo is much better than going to like the Expo East and Expo West, for instance, until you're ready. I mean, once you're ready and you have the capital behind you, it's something to incorporate.
Great. So one thing I think when you go through something like what you went through, you learn a lot. That's when you learn the most, right? From
Right.
making mistakes and failing.
Learn more from
Failing is it's amazing, and
I've
it's
I've
happened to me.
changed the meaning of what failure
Right.
means. I've even
But the one thing that I don't know if you would agree, one thing that you gain is that you become fearless going forward. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, that's one of the biggest pieces of advice. I was really nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, we've, borrowed money from this one, and to get us where we are, what happens if this doesn't work out, right? And my mentor said, so what does failure look like? I was like, well, we would have to close, and then we'd have to figure out how to pay everyone back that we borrowed money from, and we'd have to, I guess, get jobs again or figure out how we were going to sustain ourselves. And he's like, okay, and then what? He goes, you'd find something else to get passionate about, and you'd go get it. And I was like, you're right. He's like, so now that you know what failure looks like, get back to winning, right? So it's like, sometimes it's good to, what does that really look like? Because sometimes we're talking about it, but we don't even really put ourselves into what, I guess, and I don't really consider that failure. I consider that, just a growing pain, right? Because real failure is when you stop. And I've coined failure as fearlessly aiming in leadership until radical excellence. So I've changed it all around, because I feel like, how do you learn how to ride a bike? You fall down, right? And then, I'm going to go a little bit more to the middle next time so that I don't fall the next time, right? So I feel like failure is a great teacher. I don't feel like it's really a bad thing.
Okay, great. I think that's a great ending note, by the way. I think I want to thank Jilea for being here. You're going to stay a few minutes?
Definitely.
If you want to ask any more questions. I thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
January 28th, if I'm not, mistaken, we'll be here again, and I hope to see many of you again here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.